Welcome to the Capstone Conversation, the East Bay's best podcast. Hosted by Jared Asch, bringing you in-depth conversations with the leaders shaping your community.
Today, we're going to be talking about fire safety as we go into the heart of summer fire season here in California, where fires have already started. Today, we're going to be talking about how technology is impacting the way we fight fires and the way we respond in the planning to them, prior and after. Today, we are joined by two technology companies. We have Bowen Kyle from Ladris and Gadi Benjamini from FireDome. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thanks, Jared. It's a pleasure to be here.
And Gadi, why don't you give us a little bit of your background and talk to us about FireDome, and then we'll have Bowen do the same.
Perfect. Thanks again. FireDome, it's a new approach or a new category, as we like to call it, to create protection around properties, around businesses from wildfire. I'll talk about it later more thoroughly. My background is mainly from the Israeli military. I'm in Israel right now, but I'm relocating to the Bay Area in 2 months. So soon to be both of yours neighbor. And essentially, I spent 14 years in the Israeli military, mainly on intelligence roles. And I was ranked lieutenant colonel in my last role there. Then I went from protecting the Israeli citizens and our country to climate. I wanted to make a huge impact on the world and climate as we see the fires and we see floods and we see other natural disasters that are increasing, unfortunately. We need to do things to make humanity more prepared to handle these situations. And I wanted to make an impact on that front. I had a company that I was a CTO of the company tackled methane gas emissions. And after that, about 2 years ago, I started FireDome with Dee. She's my co-founder. She's the CTO of the company. And fires has been our lives in the past 2 years. There are also fires here in Israel, but not as many as in California and the US. And it's unfortunately, it's something that's increasing more and more. And we have to find new solutions and create new technologies and innovations like Bowen does at Ladris and we do at FireDome. I'd love to elaborate on that later.
Bowen?
Thank you. Pleasure to be here. My name's Bowen Kyle. I'm the CTO and one of the co-founders of Ladris Technologies. Ladris is a company that builds software for disaster preparedness. We do wildfire simulation. We do evacuation simulation, flood monitoring, and communication to the public. We sell software to counties and cities in California and across the Western states. And we also have an app that's for consumers and communicates that information to them. I founded Ladris in 2018 when I was studying at UC Berkeley with my roommate and childhood friend, Leo Sleeman. He's our CEO. I'm the chief technology officer. We grew up in Northern California over in Nevada County in the greater Lake Tahoe area, a pretty small town, Grass Valley, Nevada City area. And it's a beautiful place to grow up, but there's also lots of wildfire, being in the forest and very dry summers and that kind of thing. It was definitely part of the community that we grew up in. Wildfires and evacuations were things that happened every couple of years, would impact us. And then some of the more extreme examples in the late 2010s, I think really got the attention at the state and local level about what do we need to do to better prepare for these kinds of things? What can we invest in ahead of time in addition to all the tremendous response that we do? How can we invest more in planning, proactive communication, and things like that? And so we created our first software in partnership with Nevada County, actually, where we grew up. And that's where we designed our evacuation simulation technology that we now hold patents on and did software co-development with them. Had the opportunity to work with lots of great people since then in the almost decade that we've been doing this, including quite a few agencies in the Bay Area throughout Northern California.
Talk about, with Nevada County as a great example, definitely a high fire risk county. Talk about how they're using this product, right? Give us that use case example.
Sure thing. There's a lot of, differences between local agencies, especially emergency management. It's not a homogenous group, but a typical use case for us would be a county emergency management department buys our software and they do a few different things with it. One, they use it to do their formal planning activities. If they need to submit an LHMP, a local hazard mitigation plan, or a community wildfire protection plan, both of those require an evacuation analysis component of it. And our software does a really nice job with that. You can run these simulations in seconds. It's just a couple of clicks and invest a lot of engineering time in making it run fast. That's a much more robust route versus hiring a consultant to do manual analysis. Those studies typically end up being very limited because they can only look at a few different scenarios. You imagine a county trying to plan for all the different types of evacuations that could occur. You really need to look at hundreds of different scenarios. You have how many neighborhoods in a county, and then each neighborhood could have a dozen different realistic evacuation scenarios, depending on where the fire starts, what direction it's moving, what time of day it is, traffic conditions, things like that. Our software allows them to do a robust analysis to look at all these different contingencies, but that's just one use case. We also use it in real time or near real time. If there's a fire start in an area, we'll simulate the projected spread. How is this fire going to move across the landscape over the next operational period? How will that impact evacuations? And you build this understanding ahead of time. If we need to call an evacuation in 2 hours from now, how long will it take to clear the traffic congestion on the road network? Are we looking at a 4-hour clearance time or a 10-hour clearance time? Which roads will be safe? Where do we need to deploy our limited resources? Questions like that.
That's important. I was just talking to a friend during the big Santa Rosa fire. They were trapped at a resort in Calistoga, and they finally got an order that said, okay, the road's clear, you could evacuate, but we're not guaranteeing your safety on the road. But okay. And it's because they couldn't predict which way the winds would shift, if they could keep that corridor open for how long. And it was kind of risky. If you could predict a little bit in that window, give them a vision of how the winds might shift and tie it into weather and whether that evacuation route could be open. Hey, we're only going to open it for 20 minutes right now. That's the safety time. That at least lets everybody know, right? And that's good planning there.
Absolutely. And if I could just add one more thing to that, a lot of times in an incident, the actual options are really limited. The first responders are doing the best that they can with the options that they have available. Sometimes it still results in dangerous scenarios, people needing to evacuate on roads that may have lethal heat exposure or other problems like that. And so it becomes really important, the work that we do throughout the year, in the winter, in the spring, when it's not fire season. But that's when we plan how to spend the money for fuels treatment. That's how we decide what strategies we're going to employ during those incidents. We do a lot of that kind of work, this year-round prioritization, so that we can understand what are the most critical evacuation routes, where will we need people to be traveling through, and how can we keep those routes safe? How do we go and reduce the potential risk that could occur?
And Gadi, let's talk about FireDome and a little bit about your product and use cases, because yours is a planning, but yours is also action when the first small flames start. Talk a little bit more about FireDome and how you're utilized.
First, I'll say that we're inspired by systems that operate in Israel to protect the people from external threats. Systems start, as you said, Jared, with collecting data and then detecting or identifying threats and then responding to the threat. The whole chain of order, chain of events, our system does. First of all, we do a survey, we call it, at customers' sites. And the customer, as we call them, partners, they could be HOAs, they could be vineyards, they could be resorts. You mentioned the resort earlier. They could be utilities, infrastructures, logistic warehouses, essentially any property that is exposed to wildfire risk. Then we plan, after we collect the data on the property, the vegetation type, the topography, the microclimate, wind conditions, temperature, humidity, We plan the protection strategy around the property and inside the property, end to end, understanding where the fires can come from, doing fire behavior simulations. How can they spread? How can ember showers spread into the property? And then what we do is we install the system. The system is stands still. It's not mobile on the property at an area that we agreed upon with the customer, with the property owner, the HOA, and then it waits for an alert, external alert, that a wildfire starts approaching towards the property that is protected by the system. It then wakes up autonomously without any human there, any human in the loop, and creates multiple layers of protection. Some of them are preventive, meaning they prevent the fire from penetrating into the property. We do that by layering out fire retardant, eco-friendly fire retardant at the circumference of the property. Using one system, we can protect up to 70 acres because the range of the system is about 1,000 feet. And what the system does, it sends out projectiles, or we call them smart capsules, with the retardant to create kind of fire break around the property. And that prevents encroaching fires from penetrating inwards. That's the same methodology that firefighters use to create fire breaks, to move the fire and get a fire to places that they can more easily suppress later on. The second layer that we apply is also preventive, is covering the main structures and assets within the property that we agreed with and prioritized with the customer, with the same retarding, using the same methodology of sending out these capsules. These capsules open up midair above the structures, and then the fire retardant is spread on the roofs and on the walls. And then this prevents embers from igniting on structures. We saw in the LA fires last year, about 85 to 90% of the structures were destroyed because of embers, not because of the fire. That is key to protect these structures from being ignited by embers. And the last layer is a more reactive layer that detects spot fires that do start inside the property because of the embers that drifted in, and then suppressing them immediately before they start expanding when they're very small, within seconds, using the same capsules, but with water, because our system can toggle between water and fire retardant as needed. As I mentioned, it's fully autonomous. It doesn't rely on local utilities like water, power, and communications. We bring everything in with the system. And it also collects a lot of data 24/7. We collect the data. We do a detection for 24/7, even if there's not a fire around. And we also have cameras on site that we use them to detect the spot fires, but they can also be used again to detect fires that are not related to the wildfire that's raging out there. We're fully integrated with local fire services, depending on the area where we install the system. And we're focusing also on California. That's why I'm moving there in a couple of months. Our system, as we speak, is being shipped from Israel to our test site in Sacramento, where we'll do tests and demonstrations in the second half of the year. Exciting times ahead. We're eager to get the systems into the US and start partnering with communities and business owners and fire chiefs and help enhance the protection.
I want to get both of you to comment on the other person's technology here. You're both learning about it for the first time within this podcast episode. But what do you see the advantages? Remember, if we're talking to city officials, firefighters, how does this just all play together in the greater fire safety thing in a positive way and incorporating new technology?
I think that first I'll start with saying that the problem, the challenge is so immense that there's not a single solution to the wildfire crisis. We need multiple solutions. We need them end to end, from intelligence gathering to evacuation planning, to suppression, reaction to the wildfires. I think that working together in partnerships, and we are one of our main values in the company is to create partnerships with other companies that are in the space. We don't see most companies as competitors. We see them as partners. And I think that the only way we can succeed is to complement solutions. And I think Bowen's solution and Ladris could integrate very well with FireDome. The data layer, the planning layer, the fire simulations, we can definitely work together to perfect both our operations and both of our systems, and we'll definitely exchange uh, numbers and talk after the podcast. I think that that's going to be great. We need the data piece, and we need the suppression and reaction piece, and we need to work with the counties, and we need to work with the fire chiefs to make it work. And I think both of our companies can do that from two ends of the same array of solutions.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with that. And what Gadi's saying about the need for solutions across a wide spectrum of different applications within the broader umbrella of disaster preparedness, disaster mitigation, that kind of thing. And I was learning about FireDome, and it's a really interesting product design that you guys have. And I could see it. I anticipate that it will be very successful in a lot of the areas that we work with, that Ladris works with. I get the opportunity to speak with a lot of the citizens in the areas that our technology is deployed. A lot of times there's very active community members. It's one of the great things about disaster preparedness and prevention is that you see fire safe councils, you see these community groups that volunteer a tremendous amount of their time and energy into keeping their local community safe. And I get to speak with them. Oftentimes they'll invite me into their homes, onto their property. I will tell you the types of contraptions that individual people built on their properties to try to defend from fire, like these sprinkler systems, like automated alarms, types of things like that. It's really extensive, and I think would surprise a lot of people to know the amount of energy that goes into that in certain areas, especially fire-prone areas. But you talk about remote locations, ranches, vineyards, different businesses that are not easily accessible for firefighters, right? The firefighters aren't going to be there in 10 minutes. It might take them an hour to get to your property if something were to happen. And people understand this and take ownership of the problem themselves. And I think I know you guys do quite a bit more than that, but I really see a lot of those use cases just with the people that I talk to directly. I think there'd be a big market. So what you guys build.
And Bowen, you guys have a good number of clients throughout California now. When I talk to public safety officials, even city IT directors, county IT officials, I think one of their biggest concerns is this risk aversion. They just, oh my gosh, this is new technology. How do I know it'll work? And Gadi's technology is definitely state of the art. It's more than just software. The advice I give them is embrace the new technology. Give it a try, right? They're just concerned about taking this risk. They're concerned about what happens if it doesn't work. Am I wasting money? What happens if the company goes bankrupt? Talk a little bit about that from your perspective.
Totally. Especially in the earlier days of our company, that was a huge focus for us. How do we build this credibility? Didn't help that me and my co-founder were pretty young at the time too. And they're like, how do we trust that these guys in their early 20s are running a legitimate business and whatnot? Gadi's there's a few steps ahead of us there, just in terms of the way that he can speak to his background and the credibility that comes along with that. But outside of the personal, do they trust you as a person? Do they trust your business as a whole? And how can you get people to embrace, how can you get agencies to embrace a new technology and fold it into their processes, get it through the gatekeepers that exist, things like that, like the IT departments and whatnot. And for us, I guess I would say there's a set of steps that you need to take, right? You need to make sure all your stuff is compliant. And it really helped us to have access to people that were former CIOs in California counties and work with them and be like, okay, what's the checklist that we need to satisfy to be compliant? Like, for example, we moved all of our servers onto AWS GovCloud was one of those things. Even though it did more or less the same architecture and everything that we had on our existing server stack, it's just, they know they're getting that security. It's a known quantity. It's just another thing that they don't have to worry about failing. It's maybe not the most crazy advice in the world, but just diagnose the problem and find a solution.
But I think that's smart, right? And If it's something simple like to go with Microsoft, I think it's Azure or Amazon Cloud Services, simple things that just help them feel like you're secure and protecting data is a big step that a lot of startups have to take. And I think credibility is definitely one that comes up. And I was talking to a fire chief recently who said, I get approached by vendors anywhere I go. And I get emails from that is clearly AI, not personalized, or it's personalized through the AI. And it's like, I don't know who to trust. I don't know who to look for. And so I'd much rather go with a company or a friend that brings credibility. If you partner with former CIOs, right? Just to help boost that credibility, build that localized trust. I think that's important. Gadi, do you want to weigh in on some of this?
Jared, I completely agree with Bowen and with what you said. I think for us, the key is to create relationships with the fire chiefs, to show them that we mean business, to show them that we can deliver. We're inviting a lot of people to see the system live in California as I said, in the next 6 to 9 months. I think that will create a lot of credibility because the AI era, people need to see things with their eyes and touch and feel. And I think that's also key. The second thing is to learn. Most of the conversation that we did in let's say 6 months when we started the company, with fire chiefs, with insurance companies, with people who lost their businesses and homes, was just listening, asking questions, listening, understanding the problem, as Bowen said, understanding what the pain points are. And that's how we built relationships with those people. And B, we built our system and our methodology and our whole approach to fit those needs, to fit those pain points. I think creating these types of conversations was really useful for us to build trust with the different stakeholders that we're working with. That's the key. Create the trust, create the relationships, show them that we can give them added value. And these are my main tips, but Bowen said most of it.
Let's expand on that, right? Gadi, your project, this concept of these real life launching devices that shoot the fire retardant up, you're taking it several items, right? You have cameras and digital software and AI that is identifying these fires and spotting them instantaneously from their start. But then you're launching this, and this concept, like, people are like, whoa, that sounds so sci-fi, right? But it is real. And you have tested it and you know it works. What is some of that like reaction, like that sounds out there that you're getting? Just talk a little bit more along this lines about that and how you're building that credibility and addressing it.
Great question. And we do, when the system, before we sent it to California, we had very nice videos that we did of the testing that you mentioned. And we went and we even built a small model of the system and brought it to the US, showing people, trying to get familiar with it. Because when people say, we have suppression drones, everyone knows what a drone is, how it looks like, what it does, how it flies. People don't know what a FireDome launcher is. It's a new thing. It's something that doesn't exist. We're not aware of any other companies that have created something that works like that. That's a lot of the work, trying to show them the advantages, show them how this surpasses other technologies that exist and can give them added value. I think what helped a lot was the fact that we showed people how their property is threatened by fires with the fire behavior simulations that we did, and how FireDome can create these multiple layers of protection to protect their own property. We learned how their property looks like. We learned what the type of topography, vegetation, etc. the property has. This created a lot of trust and a foot in the door to create the conversation on the launcher and the technology in the system. And the other aspect is safety. We are very safety first. We wanted to make sure that all the questions about what if the capsule hits a helicopter that flies by, we have 4 different types of solutions for that we implemented. What happens if there's a human in the area? We have 5 different solutions for that, 5 different layers of protection for that. That kind of lowered a lot of the worries that people had on the safety aspects. I think these are the main things that kind of help us speak with people and get them to be interested. And once they see it, they're like, super cool. We haven't seen anything like that. We want to have it. That's where we are now. And I think that once we bring it to the US, show them people can come by and see it in action, that will also obviously help us create the more trust and understanding what the system is, try to grasp it more real life. That's pretty much.
Bowen, I see you nodding in here. You want to keep adding to this part of the conversation?
I don't have a whole lot more, but definitely agree with that approach. It's all just very true from my experience.
When you're talking to first responders, right? Both of you interact with them in different ways. Your markets are slightly different, who you're trying to sell to. Let's start with the first responders, and then we'll dive into the IT directors. What advice do you have them, not about your products per se, but like technology in this space overall, right? Just give them your best advice. How should they look at technology? How can they vet it? How do they know what's good? How can it be deployed? Maybe start with first responders, and then we'll touch on IT directors as a follow-up question. Bowen, you want to go first here?
Sure thing. That's a really good question. I mean, when I work with first responders, my perspective is that I'm there to help them in any way they can. At the end of the day, they're the ones that are going into the burning building and saving lives. They're kind of men and women in the arena, so to speak. And software that they use is in a supporting capacity. I don't come in and pretend to know how to tell them how to do their job or anything like that. I don't have a background in emergency response, although we're lucky enough now to have a lot of advisors on our team and whatnot, including some of the top former fire chiefs from Cal Fire and things like that. But my approach is I am trying to push technology adoption at the end of the day. In my opinion, technology is underutilized, especially software is underutilized right now in the emergency response space. And that's because I think it's rapidly developing. Every year, there are a lot of new advancements that are made, and it takes a while to fully adopt them. My role, I'm typically advocating not just for our technology, but for the use of technology in disaster preparedness and disaster response as a whole. And my approach and the approach of our company, I would say we're trying to demonstrate two things. One, utility, and number two, reliability. We got to show that, hey, this is worth your time to adopt this because you get the following utility. Here's the intelligence that it generates, and trying to put it in as concrete terms as possible. This is the time saved. This is the cost reduction. Because for first responders, those things can translate all the way up into lives saved at the end of the day. If we can make a decision more quickly with more information at hand, the consequences of that can be lives, they can be property. Demonstrating that there's a strong utility of the product or the technology adoption process as a whole. This is what you get out of it. And then reliability, probably even more important. In crunch time, can we trust the system? What are the failure points? What have we done to make sure that nothing will go wrong? That the thing that we practiced in the off season will execute every time reliably in an incident. And we see that, for example, with our simulation software, and even more so with our communication tools, right? Like when I call an evacuation order in the platform, that will translate immediately to everybody's phones without any bugs or glitches or anything like that. So crucial. So we try to build, a lot of times for first responders in particular, systems that are more on the simple side, but they're reliable. There's not as many moving parts. There's not as many opportunities we try to eliminate all the opportunities for human error and technology error, engineering failures. And then we try to show that to them as well. This is a simple system. There's not going to be any issues with it. Those kind of reliability pieces.
Resilient, simple, reliable.
100%. Yeah. And useful.
And useful.
I just wanted to add on Bowen. I agree with everything you said, Bowen. I would add for our more, let's call it boots on the ground system hardware that's out there is one to make sure that we don't interrupt the fire services and that we're interoperable, meaning we can help them with the situational awareness. We have the data that we collect. Obviously, it's transferred to the local fire service, and they are completely aware of where we're located and what we're doing 24/7. I think interoperability and safety are also important aspects.
That makes sense. We'll have them on too. A police safety client. And what we look at is how can we save the officers time in terms of paperwork, taking in reports. And what they're doing in their initial clients is they're really studying on the data how much officers' time could be saved at a desk. And it's in 5 different ways they're calculating that so that they could go back out to the field. They're not trying to take anybody from overtime. They're trying to say, look, how can you use time in the car after booking somebody? Can you do work while you're driving, utilizing tools? And it's all geared towards, hey, instead of going back to a precinct, can you go back out to the field? And I think that's a key feature. And I heard, Bowen, you talked a little bit about that. How can we save them time so that they could do other things, not at a desk, and be back out there working with the community and working in the field?
Absolutely. Any opportunity that I can take to get a member of law enforcement or a firefighter away from their task and have more time out in the real world, so to speak, is a huge value add, in my opinion. There is a level of kind of bureaucracy and form filling and all that kind of thing that our first responders do have to deal with, and it does bog them down. And we're trying to help them make that part of their process as efficient and robust and useful as possible and save them an immense amount of time.
And Gadi, one thing I want to pick up that you talked about, which I know comes up from a lot of the supporting team, is the drone aspect, right? Fire departments actually hate drones. They hate news media drones. They hate personal drones. They hate ranchers who have their own fire system carrying a bucket of water drone because it gets in their way. And you're specifically designing that redundancy and reliability so you don't interfere with the fire crews, right?
And specifically with the airspace that is so valuable, and especially when there are very strong wildfires. I think that we gave a lot of thought on how to create, again, the interoperability and the synchronization between our launching, like the launching of the capsules and whatever resources, aerial resources are spread out by the firefighters. For example, we have the cameras we taught the algorithm to spot from afar, to spot aerial vehicles that approach the polygon that we're protecting. Once we detect them, the system won't launch for a few minutes, few seconds until the aerial vehicle passes. Or another example is that we have built-in ADSB transmitters and receivers. We receive the transmission from the aerial vehicles that are around the area. And then again, if we detect something in the vicinity, we pause the system until it passes. We gave a lot of thoughts, a lot of it's not innovation because these are off-the-shelf components that we integrated, but a lot of thought about how to make it efficient, how to make it safe. And we learned that from the firefighters, from the countless meetings that we had and talks that we had with them. And the important thing is to just listen and implement the best advice that they can give. And they're the professionals. That's the main thing. And the fact that they can see our systems on their screens 24/7, and they can use the data that we collect 24/7, I think it also helps create that partnership.
I'll pick up on something there, is that neither one of you are developing this in boxes of what we have seen from Silicon Valley in the past. You guys are working with firefighters, traffic engineers, you're talking to aerial operators and working with people who have 20, 30-year experience, whether they're active or retired. And I want to give both of you a lot of credit for that. I don't know if there's anything you want to add. Both of you have touched on it, but I really think that's important that you have partnered with people who have boots on the ground experience in these communities and expertise.
Neither Bowen or myself fought fires in the past. Having these people on the team and as consultants and have these discovery talks is key. It's key to create something that is useful, that is safe, that will integrate with their efforts and not interrupt them. I think that's key. I agree with you.
Yeah, 100%. And I would say that's one of the best parts of my job is that I get to work with people that are domain experts in the community. And one of my least favorite parts about operating a tech startup, a young tech company in the Bay Area, is how much of a bubble there can be in tech in Silicon Valley. This kind of insular culture to it that I think at times can be fairly disconnected from the rest of the world. I definitely noticed that, like growing up in Northern California, but not in the Bay Area, the kind of disconnect there can be even from like the tech companies and the stuff that's a 2-hour drive east of them. And we see that a lot in this space. I really appreciate the opportunity to bridge that gap, bring all the great technology, all the smart, brilliant people that work in tech in Silicon Valley and get them to apply themselves to something that's interdisciplinary, that touches on more real world concerns, very practical. How do we save lives? How do we protect people's property?
I'll throw out a challenge to both of you is if you guys want to, I could get you hooked up to a fire academy and we could throw all the gear on and practice you guys just running up a flight of stairs and holding the gear. And it'll make some good videos, but it'll give you the experience of just being out there with them and what the guys literally on the line are looking at for a couple hours. If you want that, I'm sure we could figure that out.
I mean,
Is that a real thing? A real
That's a real thing. They both gave me thumbs up. We're going to take this and I'll see if I can make it happen.
Yeah, I
before
actually-
hear that.
Jared, I did it. We have in Israel an advanced fire academy. And one time we had a tour there and we stepped into a room and suddenly the room started burning. And it was, wow, I won't forget that experience. It was hot. And we just ran out. We had the suits and everything, but I'd love to do it in California. And let's do that.
We'll figure out that challenge and it'll be good. How do people learn more? How do people learn more about either one of you, Gadi and then Bowen?
Just send me an email, call me. I speak with everyone. Again, every call that we have, we learn a lot. And it's key to develop the business and it's key to develop the methodology and the strategy ahead. Again, Jared, if you can publish my number and my email, and we have the website also for more info and the videos, we're super happy to connect and talk.
Sure. Bowen?
You can learn a lot about our company at our website, ladris.com. That's LADRIS.com. There's some, you kind of can see some product snapshots there, some different material. I'm on LinkedIn, and that's a good way to reach me. I'm assuming Gadi too, because I got a LinkedIn request from him. And that's the best way. We do a lot of software demos and that kind of thing. For anybody listening that's interested in seeing our software, contact us and we'd love to show it to you. We'll demo it.
And anything I haven't asked you guys that you want to share about your companies or the public safety technology space before we head out today?
Just reiterate that I think it's a really exciting time. I think that there's been a lot of development in the last 10 years, and I expect even more so over the next decade. I think that we're seeing the nature of these disasters changing pretty rapidly. We're seeing wildfires, for example, and flooding in areas that historically weren't prone to those kinds of events. And so we have communities all over the country that are facing challenges that they've never had to face before. And I think that the good news is that the technology is also advancing with that. And I think that it will continue to be one of the key ingredients that we need to keep people safe and to protect the communities, the way of life and areas that are disaster prone. That's always been our company's mission, that nobody should die in a disaster. And within that, You should be able to live near the forest. You should be able to live near the coast and still enjoy a quality of life where you trust your local agencies to keep you safe and everybody's informed and they know a plan. That's what we do. And I appreciate you having us on.
Hey, Gadi?
Thanks, Jared. I think the key to face this immense challenge is the partnerships and the layering out of different solutions together to face these challenges, fully aligned, fully integrated, fully interoperable with the first responders, the fire chiefs. I think that's the key to succeed, and that's the key to face this challenge in the coming decades, because it's going to get hotter, it's going to get drier, more wildfires in areas like Bowen said, in areas that didn't experience wildfires in the past. And we have to think differently. I think we see a lot of action in this direction, a lot of fire chiefs that are more open to collaborate and to embrace technologies and innovations, and communities. We spoke about it. But again, the key is to work together to win this. Thank you.
Great. Gadi Benjamini from FireDome and Bowen Kyle from Ladris. Thank you both for joining me here today. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Jared.
Thank you, Jared. A pleasure.
Thanks for listening to the Capstone Conversation. Don't forget to subscribe and follow Jared Asch and Capstone Government Affairs on LinkedIn. Leave us a review and share this episode with a friend.